Hey, what's going on, APUSH people? We have Key Concept 4.2 for you. This one is for the revised 2015 edition, the most up-to-date video you will find on Key Concept 4.2. Before we begin into shout-out time, I got a couple classes to shout out. Mrs. Moore's class from Temecula, I hope I pronounced that correctly, Coach Slaughter's class, and Ms. Powell's class as well. Thank you all for watching, and best of luck to you this year. All right, let's take a look at Key Concept 4.2. It states, innovations in technology, agriculture, and commerce powerfully accelerated the American economy, precipitating profound changes to U.S. society and to national and regional identities. That is from page 47 of the curriculum framework. A couple of big idea questions to think about as we watch this video. 1, how did the market revolution revolutionize the production of goods and transform or change gender and family roles? And how did new inventions transform the production of goods? That to me is screaming like a short answer question. New inventions and their impact. Okay, Key Concept 4.2, Roman numeral 1 states, new transportation systems and technologies dramatically expanded manufacturing and agricultural production. So let's talk about what the heck the market revolution is. It's a revolution in transportation, communication, and the production of goods. What is the impact of this? Well, we have manufactured goods become more organized, and we have the emergence of factory systems such as the Lowell factory system in Lowell, Massachusetts, in which saw young single women work in factories. So this is important. We increasingly see the production of goods going from homes to factories. Let's jump into some new innovations, but before we do, I want to let you know I do have a video in the description that goes over these in detail. So for textile machinery, we have things like the spinning jenny, and Samuel Slater was this really important dude from England who disguises himself, and he sneaks out of the country, comes to America, and he's known as the father of the American factory system because he memorized plans for a spinning jenny and also helped build factories in the United States. Interchangeable parts by Eli Whitney. This led to the mass production of goods because all the parts were identical and could be easily replaced if broken. The telegraph helped spread information across the country via Morse code. And we have agricultural inventions you should be familiar with, such as the steel plow by this dude John Deere. This would break soil and allow farmers to plant crops more easily. The McCormick Reaper allowed them to harvest crops more easily when they were done growing. And the cotton gin as well, also invented by Eli Whitney. We have him again. This was used to separate seeds from the cotton, and this drastically increased the demand for not only cotton, but slavery as well. It really doesn't matter which one of these inventions we're talking about, they all increase production efficiency. So cotton is being produced at a much more efficient rate. Manufactured goods are because of interchangeable parts. The development of infrastructure is huge during this time in American history. We have roads such as the Cumberland Road, which originally connected Cumberland, Maryland to Ohio, and then is extended as far as Illinois later on. And this was paid for by the federal government because this involves interstate commerce or trade between two or more states. That's an example of an interstate improvement. Canals, specifically the Erie Canal, which connected Albany to Buffalo and really New York City via the Hudson River as well. This was paid for entirely by New York State because this is an example of intrastate trade or trade only within one single state. Railroads, the B&O Railroad, this is one of the first railroads that connected Baltimore to Ohio, and many others would spring up throughout the country as the years went on. And many of these projects were paid for by state and local governments, not the federal governments. Many of these were paid for by state and local and private corporations as well. So what is the impact of all of this? Well, we see that two regions in particular, the North and the Midwest, they will be more closely connected than the South. The South will really kind of be left out because they're so focused on plantations, and the North and the Midwest will be the beneficiaries of this infrastructure. Okay, let's jump over to Roman numeral 2 for Key Concept 4.2. The changes caused by the market revolution had significant effects on the U.S. society, workers' lives, and gender and family relations. So we see a shift from subsistence farming or farming just to feed yourself. Now people begin to farm to sell crops at massive rates, not just cash crops like cotton, but food as well. More men and women begin to work in factories, no longer just in the homes where a lot of goods were produced that I talked about earlier. And early factories were built near water. Here is Lowell, Massachusetts, which at one time was the second most powerful manufacturing city really in the entire world. And it's important during this time that factories are built near water as a source of power for the machines. And they would produce goods for distant markets, not only in the United States, but in various parts of the world as well. What's the impact of manufacturing and the market revolution? Well, we have a growing middle class. We also have a widening gap between the rich and the poor. We have very few people who have a lot of money, and we have this growing group of poor people as well. And there's also a change in gender and family roles. Middle class women, the expectation was that they would not work outside the home. And this was held up by this idea of the cult of domesticity. This promoted separate spheres for men and women. And really, a woman's sphere belongs at home, not outside the home in work. And here's a magazine, Godey's Lady Book, throughout the 19th century that really helped reinforce this idea of the cult of domesticity. Okay, we'll finish up with 4.2, Roman numeral 3. Economic development shaped settlement and trade patterns, helping to unify the nation while also encouraging the growth of different regions. So we see a wave of immigrants coming in from Europe, and they tended to settle in the East and the Midwest. And there's two groups in particular you should be familiar with, and we'll talk more about them in period 5, but we'll introduce them here. And as a result of these groups, we see increased interdependence between the Northeast and the Old Northwest, because Germans would settle in the Old Northwest in the frontier, in places like Ohio as farmers. And the Irish, they would settle in the East in cities as urban workers. So we really see a connection between the East and the Midwest, or the Old Northwest. And many Irish escaped Ireland in the 1840s and 1850s because of the Irish potato famine. And this forced many Irish to flee Ireland, and many died in Ireland as well. New cities began to emerge along the Ohio and Mississippi rivers, cities such as St. Louis and Cincinnati. And Cincinnati's nickname was Porkopolis, and here is an early painting of Cincinnati, my favorite city. They became centers for meatpacking, and later on Chicago will as well. But a lot of cities began to develop along these very powerful, popular rivers. So we see this emergence of national ties between the North and the South. Cotton production in the South is enormous, and this would be shipped to northern factories and made into different textiles. Banks would provide funding for both factories and plantations in the South, as well as equipment for plantations. And then we have the emergence of a distinctive Southern identity. The South continued to rely on cash crops, so much so that the South's nickname was King Cotton, because they produced so much cotton and they made so much money from it. Plantation owners had tremendous power, both economically and politically as well, and they made sure that their own interests were advanced. And many elites defended slavery. John C. Calhoun, he gave a speech in 1837 in which he identified slavery as a positive good, and he argued that it was positive for the slaves. And these are arguments that the South used to justify slavery. There were hopes to unify the U.S. economy, most notably Henry Clay's American system. I do have a video in the description of that. There are 3 parts to this. The second bank of the United States, building up infrastructure through roads and canals, as we've talked about, and that would be funded by tariffs. And tariffs are taxes on imported goods. And what this does is it tends to be favored by people in the North and the Midwest and not the South. So just like the market revolution, and infrastructure tends to benefit the North and the Midwest more than the South, the American system is the same. And the South in particular will dislike the American system because of tariffs that benefited industry and not agriculture. All right, we'll finish up with some test tips for multiple choice and short answer. Be able to identify and explain the impact of the market revolution, the impact on wealth in this country, the growing gap between the rich and the poor, as well as gender and family roles, and the impact of technology on industry and agriculture, and goals and impacts of the American system. For essay questions, it could be about the market revolution in general and reasons for sectional tensions and the emergence of unique regional identities during this time. All right, guys, look forward to see you right back here for Key Concept 4.3, in which we will talk about a very, very famous, important compromise from 1820. I thank you guys very much for watching, and have a good day.